and welcome to Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. I think you might be the first person I've spoken to this morning, and so consequently I'm going to have to take a few minutes to kind of come around, because it was a late night last night. I don't know if you had a late night. I had a late night. Late for me is like 10:45. You know, I'm one of those people that's normally in bed by 9. But it was a late night last night. So, good morning. Thank you so much for spending your morning with Backchannel. It's just after 9 here on the West Coast. I'm in California. On the East Coast, it's noon, and I'm here for a couple of hours to chat with you, hang out, look at the news, talk about what's happening across the world. If you want to get in touch, then you can either communicate with your Echo Show device, just say your wake-up word followed by say, and then your message, or go to our chat facility at backchannel.tv. Okay, the show today includes who is Michael Flynn and why he made such a dangerous speech yesterday. Are you one of the many who has left a pricey area in California and joined the pandemic exodus in a more economically savvy residence somewhere, maybe in Tulsa? I'm told it's cheap to live there. Also, have you joined an online community who give away stuff for free, like FreeCycle or Freegal or Facebook Marketplace or Nextdoor or one of these places? And finally, we're going to try and, if there's time, we'll take a look at the work of the great American novelist Nathaniel Hawthorne and get a couple of life lessons from him. Because who knows? We need life lessons right now because life is crazy. Well, let me mute everything because I just realized that I need to kind of go into do not disturb mode. So nobody disturbs you and me during this conversation. There we go. It's on. Right, it's done. Because, you know, sometimes I forget to put do not disturb on, and before you know it, my mum's FaceTiming me on like all 6 devices that I have here all at the same time. And I'm like, "Ugh!" Anyway, so yeah, let's dive straight into the morning papers. If you'd like to join me, well, you know where to find me. We're also streaming on YouTube, and, YouTube is such a great place to spend your time, so why not? You can comment message me there as well. I'll see your messages here. And otherwise, just talk to your device. If you have an Echo Show, then that's the way you do that. Just with the wake-up word, then say, and then your message. Okay, let's jump straight into our newspaper review. We normally start here, where I am, with the Los Angeles Times. So let's see how the LA Times is presenting its morning this morning, because it's been a crazy weekend. You know? Lightning and fires and bears 10 months on the great U.S. trails is the headline. An ambitious plan for a pandemic year became 2 students' 7,400-mile trial of determination. And this is a story about 2 boys, Jackson and Sammy, who began the Pacific Crest Trail leg of their 3-trail journey. I mean, why is what I ask myself with things like this. You know, I'm sure there's a perfectly good bus service or Uber, lots of options for getting where you need to go. But good on them. So they're going to end up in, they spent the night in California's Cleveland National Forest with the bears rather than me. Also on the front of the LA Times this morning, hi Chris. Nice to know that you're with us. Thank you very much for joining the show. Chris is in Florida. Wonderful. Right to housing, proposal Royal City is the headline. It says for years, Sacramento Mayor Darrell Steinberg has spoken out about the need for more housing and shelter for homeless people in his city. Well, his push hasn't just been about building. It's also focused on establishing some form of a legal obligation for government to provide a roof for people who have nothing. That ideological journey hasn't been a straight line for the former state legislator who authorized California's Mental Health Services Act. And it started with a call for a legal right to shelter in 2019 when he served as co-chair of statewide task force about homelessness. Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because people often say, a lot of homeless people, they don't want help. And that is true for a percentage of them, but a lot of them do, So the mayor of Sacramento is calling for more shelters and an obligation to accept the help. It's basically going to say to the homeless people, if you don't accept help, then that is going to put you in a difficult position. How do you feel about that? I don't know. I just think that when you're dealing with mental illness, a lot of people are very mentally ill or addicted, opioid addiction, various things. we were talking about on the show last week, methamphetamine and all sorts. How can you have a rational conversation with somebody that's so heavily medicated or addicted? You know, how can they make rational decisions for themselves? It's a little bit like elderly care or dementia care, isn't it? You almost have to have the right of, you have to have you have to have somebody making decisions for that person, on behalf of that person, if they're no longer mentally sound. I'm not feeling particularly mentally sound myself this morning, but you know, we plod on. COVID surge is seen as warning to state. It says the vaccination rate in Colorado, like in California, is good, but its coronavirus case rate is soaring. Well, hi, darling. Good morning, darling. Darling. This is something we need to be very aware of because Dr. Anthony Fauci on Sunday made a little announcement that virus numbers are now starting to get worse again. And this is because of the holiday season, you know, that's coming up. And of course, the fact that they've now opened the land and air borders to all other countries for vaccinated people. And what we're dealing with now is potentially another surge. And let me tell you something. For all the people that say it's just the flu, it's not the flu. My friend Derek, who's still lying flat, nearly 2 years after first contracting COVID in England, longest surviving COVID patient, would tell you that it's really not the flu. It really very much is something that, you know, it's just Russian roulette, isn't it? Because the problem is some people, like my racist landlord, he got it and he kind of got better within a week, and he took ivermectin, which is a cattle deworming drug. It's an anti-parasitic drug. And as much as some people will tell you, trust me, coronavirus is not a parasite, it's a virus. Two very different things. So, you know, medically, an anti-parasitic drug, hi Stacey, cannot work on COVID. It just can't work. Like, it has absolutely no efficacy on COVID. But because he took it and is convinced that he got better, in his mind, he's like, I took ivermectin, I had COVID, I got better, therefore it must work. And I'm like, no. I said, give it to 1,000 people and we'll see who gets better. And that'll be a qualitative research. But you, no. Stacey's got Bible study at 11:30 today, so she can't stay long, all right? I'll try and speak as quickly as I can. We've got half an hour with you, Stacey. I'll do my best. Maybe we'll squeeze in your morning paper. You know, we'll squeeze in your Texan paper so that you get, you know, a local review before you have to go. And if you live in an area where you would like the local newspaper reviewed by me, then I would be very happy to do that. But you just have to tell me where you are and what paper you would like me to review. So there we go. This is another warning about coronavirus. And Colorado may be a precursor to what we could see ultimately here in California as things get cooler for us, says UCLA epidemiologist Dr. Robert Kim Farley. So, yes, that's... I mean, I've said so many times on the show that the pandemic is not going anywhere. It's not going away. And I'm flying on 4 aeroplanes in a week or so, and I'm really quite nervous about it, I'll be honest. Like, I'm really quite nervous at the idea of being on a plane with people. Because I haven't been anywhere with people. You know, I haven't even been in a restaurant with people in 2 years. I sit outside. So the idea of being inside with 150 or 250, it's just my anxiety. And I'm just going to have to deal with it. Obviously, I'll be absolutely covered in tarp. You know, they'll be like, which one's Mr. Davis? Oh, yeah, the guy covered in tarp in row 38. Sorry, Carla? Yeah, I'm going to look like the final scene in E.T. Stacey's having hot dog for lunch, although she's put hot dogs. So I wonder how many you're going to be able to fit in your mouth at once. That could be a whole competition, you know? I haven't had a hot dog in a long time. I haven't eaten meat for 2 years. Actually, no, I could eat a hot dog. There's hardly any meat in it. It's just stuff. Buy Nothing fans don't sweat holidays on the front of the LA Times. It says, imagine not worrying about the supply chain delays or the likelihood that your e-commerce order is stuck somewhere on a cargo ship. That's what life is like for members of the Buy Nothing Project. Terribly unfun name for a movement in which folks give away stuff they don't need. Children's clothing, backyard produce, knickknacks, electronics, even big-ticket items such as cars. I mean, we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but the idea of like recycling, free cycle. I have a very good free cycle story if you would like to hear it. Shall I tell it now, Carla, or shall I tell it later? It's a very good story. Later? Okay. Later. I have a very, very good free cycle story about something I sold that kind of came back to me. You're going to love it. I mean, you can be the judge of whether you're going to love it or not, but I no longer the cool summer patch up north, it says. This is for 24 years, a chap left his mobile home in the Central Valley every summer to follow a path paved by generations of California farm workers. He would get into a car packed with duffel bags of clothes and coolers with food and embark on a 14-hour journey through acres of agricultural fields, past giant sequoias, and unmarked dirt roads to their final destination, Oregon's blueberry harvest in a town called Boring. That's a shame. Turns out heat and high costs have followed California farm workers to Oregon. It's the climate, I'm telling you. It says here, generational migrations from California to Oregon have been upended by economics, housing, and climate. You see, I was discussing with someone the other day, like, where do you want to end up? Like, if California gets too hot to live in, because there will come a time when you won't be able to live in California. You know, not comfortably anyway. I mean, the very wealthy will, because they'll be inside their ivory towers with their air conditioning on. But regular people living in regular homes, it'll be too hot to live in California because the temperature of the planet is going to increase significantly and these heat waves will become just deadly. And you won't want to live in it, you know? So I was saying, like, where do you want to go? Like, where can you go? Where in America, where on the planet would you get all the pleasures of living and without all of the heat? And maybe, you know, with an internet connection these days, maybe it doesn't really matter where you live. Maybe you're just better off going to Tulsa or somewhere that is very cheap to live and just locking yourself indoors. I mean, what is the reason we choose to live in, like, fancy, civilized places? It's because we want to integrate. We want to go to restaurants and bars and hang out with people and just be where it's at, you know, be with the groovy people. But what if life becomes so climate conscious that going out into this kind of space is not advisable, or pandemics rear their heads again? I mean, it's going to change. I mean, it is already changing, but it's going to change more. And that's why I worry about this announcement about Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse, because I was thinking, you know, he's like really thinking about the fact that no one's going to be leaving their house, that the only way to go anywhere is to do it in a virtual world. And actually, you're not going to get coronavirus in a virtual world. And you're going to be able to afford all of the luxuries that you've always wanted in a virtual world. And, you know, if we are becoming increasingly tethered to our internet connection, and not just like going to a cafe and having a laptop, but like having a mission control. More people now have mission controls. Like when the pandemic first started, you couldn't buy a USB mic for love nor money. Like people were like buying studio equipment for their mission control at home, so they could sit and work and have multiple screens and a good mic and you know, multiple connections, and none of the devices were really portable. They were like creating these cockpits for themselves, these flight decks where they could sit and like communicate with the world, do their work and be on Zoom. And so I think people are just going to, you know, get like a really comfy ergonomic chair Hey, and I think people are gonna increasingly do that. And I think, like Ready Player One, which I love, that movie, the Steven Spielberg film, where the kid goes into this little wagon where he goes into the virtual world. He puts on his virtual gloves and his virtual headset and his virtual shoes, and he can move around in the metaverse. And I was thinking, wow, Zuckerberg has really thought this through. He realizes that there'll be more pandemics. He realizes that we're going to, climate change will prevent us from leaving the house. And so he is going to create a space where people are going to feel more healthy, more successful, more popular, and just have more stuff to do. And if you can earn a living in there, people will end up working in there, in a virtual world. And I don't really want to live there. I mean, I don't really like that guy, I'll be honest. I've never joined Facebook. I just don't like that guy. And it makes me sad. I go on Instagram occasionally and it comes up with Meta as the logo at the beginning of the beginning of the Instagram launch, because they own Instagram and they own WhatsApp. And it's annoying to me because I don't really want to play his games, but I feel like it's everywhere now. Very interesting, isn't it? This is the future. I mean, apparently younger people now are actually craving that kind of analog life that their parents had. They just want to see what it's like to play an old-fashioned vinyl record on a record player. They want to see what it's like to... They'll be like, oh, do you remember the days when people used to go to libraries? I still have my library card on my keys. I was looking at it the other day and I was thinking to myself, do I really need still to have the Los Angeles Public Library card? Do I still kind of need that? When did I last use that? I don't think I ever went to the library. I mean, I did once because I went to join the library. 5 years ago. That's when I went to get my library card. But I mean, will we need to kind of go back to that kind of integrated, human, interactive environment again? Or is that just long gone now? Is the safer alternative to be masked when you're out, not to talk to people, and then when you get home, that's when you kind of enter the metaverse and have real interactions with other avatars? I'm a real person, I'm not a bot. And as producer Carla says, real life never goes out of fashion. It doesn't. Look, you can touch me, you can feel me, you can stick your finger up my nose. You can't do that in the virtual world. Stacey, thank you for joining us. I know you have to go now. But hopefully you had a nice 20 minutes. That's all I was able to offer you this morning, but maybe we'll see each other tomorrow. So have a good day. Thanks for joining us here on Backchannel. You can do what Stacey did. She talks to her Echo Show device. You do the same. You just say the activation word followed by say and then your message. And then you can hang out with me here in this little box. I'm here to serve you. So, feed me. I'm like a little Tamagotchi. Like a little male, middle-aged Tamagotchi. Feed me with your words. Feed me with your instructions. And I will respond accordingly. And if I get hungry, you'll hear my stomach rumble, and then you just feed me a little more. And if I go to sleep, you just gently caress me. Put me to sleep. Okay, that's the front of the LA Times. Have we really only just done one newspaper? I feel like I've been talking for 2 hours already. Let's go to the Wall Street Journal next. That's next on our newspaper review here this morning. I'm a bit delirious this morning. I'm just I think it's because we had a couple of days off. I'm just whoa, what are we doing here? I can handle it. It's okay. I've got it. Biden nears decision on Fed pick is the front of the Wall Street Journal. President Biden faces one of the most important economic policy decisions of his presidency, which is expected this week, when deciding who should lead the Federal Reserve when Chairman Jerome Powell's term expires in February. Yeah, I think he's just going to pick Jerome Powell again. I mean, I've been predicting since the start that Biden's going to run again as president, and everyone's like, no. And I did a radio interview on the weekend, and they said to me, oh, no, you're the first person we've spoken to that said that Biden's run. And I'm like, of course he's going to run. And of course, yesterday it was announced that he's not officially announced, but unofficially it was announced that he's going to run. I think he was waiting for his proctology medical, you know? I just did this. He was for his proctology medical. He went and had a full physical, and they've given him a clean bill of health. I think they found a polyp. Not sure where they found that. And he has a bit of reflux. But, you know, the guy's like 175. Of course he's going to have some reflux. But I think he was waiting just to hear what his physical result was, and then he was going to decide. And I think he started telling friends, aides, that he's going to run again. And I think he should. Mr. Biden has signaled he's looking for continuity in federal policy because he's considering whether to reappoint Mr. Powell for a second 4-year term or elevate Governor Lael Brainard, who has strongly backed the central bank's interest rate policy over the past 4 years. Instead, the president's choice might turn on politics rather than economics because Mr. Powell's candidacy has divided progressive Democrats and led to competing views inside the Biden administration. Because Jerome Powell was a Trump installation, wasn't he? Yeah, I think so. So there we go. I don't particularly want to see Jerome Powell in because I feel like he's already done it for 4 years. It's enough already. 5 years. It's enough already. Do you know that phrase? It's a very useful phrase. It's enough already. Californians flee the coast to Inland Empire cities, also on the front of the Wall Street Journal. It says since moving out of the Los Angeles area, Eva and Randy Fluker say they miss summer weekends at the beach, monthly trips to Disneyland and their favorite Mexican food and ramen joints. They don't miss trying to squeeze their work life, 2 stuck-at-home kids, and her 98-year-old grandmother into a 1,700 square foot house in Norwalk, California. In London, we would have dreamed to have 1,700 feet. You kidding me? People live in 400 feet. Carla's living in 300 feet. This is how we live. I lived in a little townhouse, which, if you added the floors together, got you about 1,000 square feet. But the problem was, it was split over 3 floors. So I just had 3 floors of 325 square foot. It's ridiculous. It's just not... You can't live in that space and if you've got more than one of you. If you're on your own, it's fine. But if there's more than one of you... I think 1,700 square foot seems like a very nice space. They followed 250,000 others who last year moved east to the 27,000 square mile swathe of Southern California that stretches from Los Angeles County border to Arizona and Nevada. It's called the Inland Empire. I've always enjoyed hearing them say the Inland Empire on the radio. It's a really nice thing to say. Empire is such a great word, but Inland Empire just sounds great, doesn't it? Just such a lovely, 3 lovely words together, the Inland Empire. Well, it effectively tied the Phoenix region in 2020 for the biggest gain in households from migration nationwide, according to the US Postal Service. It's fascinating to me. The Inland Empire, the region, shows big gain in households, many from pricier locales. Logan, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Nice to know that you're part of Backchannel and joining the chat. Feel free to chat to me just by talking to your Echo Show device. Chris, thank you for joining Backchannel. Welcome to the show. I'm Anthony. It's 9:24 here on the West Coast, 12:24 Eastern. Afghan opium trade. We're doing the Wall Street Journal review right now. If you're just joining us, we're looking at the Wall Street Journal. Afghan opium trade blooms under Taliban. Oh, good. Isn't it nice to know that something's doing well under Taliban rule? Afghanistan. This country's opium industry, the main source of heroin sold in the West, is revving back up, it says. In Talukan, dozens of merchants openly trade different grades of opium in a busy new market that has sprung up since the Taliban's August 15 victory. Plastic bags filled with vicious brown... viscous. See? I'm on another planet today. Abel, thank you for joining us. Where did I get to? Oh, viscous. Yes. Viscous brown liquid are on display next to metal bowls filled with jelly-like substance, as well as solid dark bricks of the narcotic. White banners praising the Taliban's Islamic Emirate fly from every shop. This is in retail. This isn't even in some kind of hidden... Abel, Chris, Logan, thank you. This isn't some warehouse, like dockside warehouse that like they're keeping under wraps. This is retail that they're selling this stuff. It says in this and other districts of southern Afghanistan's Kandahar province, the Taliban movement's cradle, farmers said they're starting to plant poppies on land where they used to grow wheat or corn because of a combination of drought, international sanctions and border closures has made legal crops unprofitable. Everyone is poor here, and they will become even poorer if we don't grow poppies. There is no alternative. Our other produce simply has no market, says Salim Mohammed, a 55-year-old father of 7. He said that this month he's increased the land under poppy cultivation to 4 acres, or half of his leasehold, from 2.5. He said there's no doubt that people here will grow more poppies this year than in the past. Poppies equal opium, equal illegal drugs, equal addiction in the West. So many social scientists, social anthropologists, socio-economic lecturers and writers have been predicting this. Like, this is not a surprise in the same way that they predicted a worldwide pandemic and no one paid attention. Same thing. They've predicted this epidemic, opium trade, because of Taliban rule. And people don't really listen. They just pretend to be shocked when they find out the effects. Because, growing poppies in Afghanistan is going to mean more drug addiction in America. It just is. That's how it works, It's global supply. And if we take a leaf out of the history books, look at how the British imported opium to China and caused an epidemic of addiction in China. You see, the point is that there's always a middleman, isn't there, with drugs? There's always a middleman. England doesn't have the climate to grow the poppies. I mean, they actually do grow some poppies, but they're not on the scale of this. It's very interesting to me. There's always a middleman, especially when it comes to, drugs. Anything illegal, there's always a middleman, isn't there? When a firearm is handled and it ends up in the hands of the wrong person, Carl Rittenhouse claims his gun came from a friend. There's always a middleman. Never a middle woman. Very rarely is there a middle woman involved in these illegal activities. Let's just think about that for a moment. In fact, the phrase middle woman, I've heard middle-aged woman, that's a phrase, but middle woman, somebody who's going between the drug dealers and the recipient, the buyer, or no. girls don't want to get involved in this stuff. This is why we need to give them more responsibility. This is why they should be running companies and countries. Because they don't do these types of things. They're just not wired for it. There's too many men in that industry, like, screwing it all up, so they just stay out of the way. This is why Angela Merkel, like, people are begging her to stay on in Germany. She's done like 4 more terms than she was supposed to do. And they're like, please, please don't go. It's like Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand. You know, we need these people. Kamala Harris was the president of the United States for 85 minutes the other day. The time it took for someone to stick a camera up the president's bum. It's the only way we get a female black president is for the current president to kind of bend over the couch. It's a tragedy. Men have just screwed everything up. I don't think I'm going to identify as male anymore. You know? I think I don't want to really be associated with that lot. It's too depressing. Abel, Chris, Logan, thank you for hearing me out during this conversation. I'm just feeling my way. But it just occurred to me that, like, if anything, like, goes wrong at home, who's the first person you phone? Your mum. You don't phone your dad. What do dads know? If it's anything that you need, you're just like, oh, mum will know. If you're baking a cake and you're like, what temperature should I put it on? You don't phone dad. You phone mum. If there's a hole in the ceiling and the rain's coming in, you still phone your mum. I just think that it just makes no sense to me that, like, mums are the most important people in our lives. They birth us, they feed us, they support us. And they do it so well, like, they just do it naturally. And yet when it comes to, like, running countries, governments, departments, sales, retail, drug dealing, anything like that, they don't get the first dibs. Just a thought. Market expands for factory-built homes. I have to say, I find this very interesting. I have an obsession with, like, modular homes, eco homes and modular homes. I just think that that's how we should be building. I've been watching, like, 3D printed homes these days. I just think it's amazing. And, like, in Japan or places where they have, like, little modular hotels that are just pods. Like, all of this is, to me, is just essential and genius. It's essential. I mean, if you're somebody that, like, is out all the time, works all the time, and you just come home to sleep, don't have a huge house. We have a housing crisis. Get a pod. Get a little pod. Slot yourself in the pod. Get your 8 hours sleep. Get out your pod and go back into the world. Elvira and Bobby Guerra spent 3 years searching for a home to buy in southern Texas, but their real estate agent repeatedly showed them houses that were too expensive and still in need of work. Late last year, they went to see a house they found on Zillow and were surprised to learn it had been built in a factory by women. No, I'm kidding. I added that last bit. But wouldn't it have been nice? They liked the large backyard and that it was in a new 21-home subdivision in the San Antonio outskirts of Seguin. The first time home buyers closed in February, we were very impressed with it being a manufactured home, said Mrs. Guerra, a homemaker. See, a homemaker. She lives in the 3-bedroom house with her 18-month daughter, Mr. Guerra, a welder. He died from COVID-19 in August. This story suddenly took a very sad turn, didn't it? Housing lenders, developers, and advocates think they have found a winning formula by building homes in factories. Please turn to page 6. Oh. I don't have page 6. But if you have a copy of the Wall Street Journal and you'd like to know more, then turn to page 6. I mean, I really genuinely like the idea that, we are doing the most environmentally conscious and friendly house building, home building. I mean, there's a huge campaign in England to insulate homes, older homes that are just let the heat out and the cold in, and how people turn up the heating, when in fact, if the house was insulated, then you wouldn't have to turn up the heating. And this is actually a really, really clever way to prevent carbon emissions, is just to insulate homes. And they do it with spray foam, they have it in a spray gun, and they just make a hole in the wall, in the cavity wall. They stick the nozzle in, they pull the trigger, and it fills the cavity with foam. It's a very easily done thing to re-insulate homes. That's homes with cavity walls. The house that I used to live in was a brick house, and it had no cavities. So for a house like that, you would actually, and I did in the bedroom, because the bedroom wall was so cold, I built a false wall. I found a product. You might find this interesting. Carla, you'll definitely find this interesting. On a roll, it's like foam with a hard backing. And it's an insulation foam. And I did 2 of the walls in the bedroom, the outside walls. And it's only like 1.5 inches thick. And then you plaster over it. And then you tape. They give you some special tape to go between, because it arrives like wallpaper. They give you a special tape that seals each panel. And then once you've got your room covered in this 1.5 inch thick foam with a hard bag, you tape it, and then you plaster over it, and then you paint over it. And then a cold stone wall, like a brick wall that was cold to the touch, becomes warm. And it was not expensive. And I was like, this is very clever, because I love the tech, and I found that technology myself, and I employed a guy to come and put it up. It took him like 4 or 5 days. And I was just like, this is, it's essential. I wasn't told by the government to do it. I just did it because I wanted the bedroom to be warm. It was freezing in there. So my point is that there are technologies now that enable you to kind of stay warm at home. There just are. You just have to find them. Look at my tired eyes today, Carla. Like I can hardly open my eyes. Really tired eyes. Ooh. Sleepy boy today. I really can't go to bed after 10 o'clock. It's really bad for me. Okay, so that's how the Wall Street Journal deals. Oh, hang on. Let me just do one more story in the front of the Wall Street Journal about the global supply gridlock starting to ease. Global supply chain woes are beginning to recede, but shipping, manufacturing, and retail executives say that don't expect to return to normal operations until next year, and that cargo will continue to be delayed if COVID-19 outbreaks disrupt key distribution hubs. It says in Asia, COVID-related factory closures, energy shortages, and port capacity limits have eased in recent weeks. In the US, major retailers said they've imported most of what they need for the holidays. Ocean freight rates have retreated from record levels. So there we go. It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, look, I've said this before on this show. It takes like 6 to 9 months for the supply chain wheel to turn. And so if they were to ease the backlog now, you're still going to have to wait until like spring to feel the effects of it. Because, stuff sits in storage and in barrels and on shelves, crates and things. Okay, where did we get to? Let's have a look. Here we go. Wall Street Journal is done. I want to mention the fact that Volley here, Backchannel is Volley, has a growing list of shows, including Haley and Allison Live, waking you up in the morning with lots of laughs, and their one-star cinema review. Or you can get inspired with Liv Harrison, who loves finding out the secret behind people's successes. And also the charming and funny Hal Rudnick, who's here at 11 Pacific. That's 2 o'clock Eastern. And he will be doing his show called Your Pal Hal right after me here on Backchannel. The New York Times leads this morning. Hang on, let me just get it open so I can see it properly. Here we go. The New York Times. Locked down and frustrated in Austria. Photograph of some beautiful Christmas baubles. Who doesn't love a Christmas bauble? I love them. It says, a Christmas market in Vienna. A new wave of COVID infections spreads in Europe. Restrictions are setting off a backlash. Yes, there's been a lot of protests about lockdowns. People have just had enough of this pandemic, haven't they? Just had enough of it. I wonder how that works. I wonder what, like, in these places, I wonder what vaccination rates are like, and if they're locking down because there's not enough people vaccinated. I mean, I saw the protests in the Netherlands, and the Netherlands is such a progressive country that you would have expected that everybody. Hi, Kieran. Thank you for joining us. That you would have expected that everybody is like vaccinated and like totally like in on it, and apparently not. Obsessed with their freedom, I guess. Vaccination is freedom. Vaccination makes you free. Gives me the freedom to get on a plane and travel to the other side of the country. Gives you the freedom to go and socialize and be with your friends. Vaccination is freedom. People have a very different definition, don't they? Because they get so caught up in being told what to do. This is the human condition, isn't it? That being told what to do triggers a reaction. And that reaction is irrational. Because it's so immediate. People like, oh, don't you tell me what to do, especially somebody in authority. Invariably a man. Really off men today. I'm just like, done with you boys. Carla says I'm always off men. Yeah, it's true. I just think girls are better. I always have. You know, like my best friends are girls. My mum's a girl. She's great. You know, because of this pandemic, I haven't seen my mother for 2 years. I mean, obviously I see her on FaceTime all the time, but in terms of like seeing her, giving her a hug, 2 years. Sure, it's similar for you if you live abroad. But she's coming here on the 15th of December. I might even like drag her into this studio and like put her in here. She just extended her stay by 3 days. Staying for a month now. A whole month. After 2 weeks, I'll be like, all right, thanks very much. It was really nice to see you. It says here, over the past 20 months, Israeli intelligence operatives have assassinated Iran's chief nuclear scientist and triggered major explosions at 4 Iranian nuclear and missile facilities, hoping to cripple the centrifuges that produce nuclear fuel and delay the day when Tehran's new government might be able to build a bomb. But American intelligence officials and international inspectors say the Iranians have quickly gotten... I'm still trying to get used to American print on the front of newspapers. Have quickly gotten is not really in my vocabulary. Have quickly got the facilities back online. You don't need the ton. You just don't need the ton. It's not necessary. You can just say got. That's fine. Often installing newer machines that can enrich uranium at a far more rapid pace. When a plant that made a key centrifuge parts experienced what looked like a crippling explosion in the late spring, destroying much of the parts inventory and the cameras and sensors installed by international inspectors. Production resumed by late summer. So this is a story about hopes dimming of revival of the 2015 nuclear deal. Israeli attacks spur upgrades of Iran sites. Yeah, I mean, look, the whole Middle East has been destabilized by the 4 years of the Trump administration basically walking away from the Iran nuclear deal because he didn't really know what it was. He didn't read it. He thought that doing a deal with the Iranians in his head, because he's like a deal maker and a businessman, he's like, oh, I don't want to do a deal with the Iranians. I'm not doing a deal. Who does deals with terrorists? That's his thinking. So he's like, right, we're not doing that deal. The deal is over. And it's like, did you read the deal? Like, do you know what it was? It was sanctions. It was an agreement. They won't enrich the Iranian. If you allow if you allow the money supply, there was like all sorts of caveats to this deal. This is a deal that took decades to put in place. They finally did the deal in 2015. Obama, Getting the Iranians to sign anything is like an impossibility. They finally got it done in 2015. And then 2 years later, Trump shows up and goes, what is all this? No, we're not doing that. Walks away from the Paris climate deal, didn't read it. Walks away from the Iranian nuclear deal, didn't read it. The guy didn't read. Apparently they had to put his name into briefing documents to keep him interested because he thought it was about him. The president's morning brief, which is normally like a document, a 10-page document. He got them to reduce it to a one-pager. And they had to put his name into it all the time. So that he thought that if it was about him, he would read it. I'm not making this stuff up. Read any of the books that have been written about that administration. This will all be corroborated by multiple sources. Just having a little glass of water. Okay, should we do the news? We're going to do the news now. I do this podcast every day. It's a little 2-minute news update on what's happening around the Americas. And let's hear it now. And you can subscribe if you like it. Think of this as a little taster of US News Update. It's Monday, November 22. From the Volley Network, this is your daily US News Update. I'm Anthony Davis. A political atmosphere for President Joe Biden may have become even more treacherous with the acquittal of Kyle Rittenhouse. Biden was already facing sliding poll numbers with an electorate worn down by the coronavirus pandemic and increasing inflation. Now the president finds himself caught between outraged Democrats, some of whom were already stewing over Biden's inability to land police reform and voting rights legislation, and Republicans looking to use the Rittenhouse case to exploit the national divide over matters of grievance and race. Rittenhouse would end up fatally shooting 2 men and maiming a third. Rittenhouse and his lawyers successfully argued that he acted in self-defense during a confrontation in which he feared for his life. The verdict in the case comes at a moment when Biden is trying to keep fellow Democrats focused on passing his massive social services and climate bill. Meanwhile, an SUV plowed into a Christmas parade in the Milwaukee suburb of Waukesha on Sunday, injuring more than 20 people. Those injured appeared to include children, members of a marching band and a dance troupe, according to witnesses and videos of the incident posted online. Police Chief Dan Thompson said, "We have a person of interest that we are looking into at this time." Finally, the US government's chief medical advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, warned on Sunday that time was running short to prevent a dangerous new surge of COVID-19 infections from overwhelming the upcoming holiday season. Your daily US news update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo Show device to open Backchannel. There it is. That's the US News Update. It's a daily podcast, 2 minutes long. And if you're interested in knowing what's happening around the Americas, then that's the podcast for you. We're taking a look at the morning papers here on Backchannel. We're with the New York Times right now on this Monday, November 22. Thank you for joining us, anybody and everybody. Dylan's joined us, Kieran, Abel, Chris, Logan. Thank you very much. Nice, nice to know you're part of the show. Darling's with us as well. Kobe's with us. And Treasure as well. It's a lovely name. So, if you would like to hang out, then just join us here on Backchannel. You can do that via your Echo Show device. If you want to talk to me, say the wake-up word followed by say, and then your message. And then, of course, we're streaming on YouTube as well. Just search Anthony Davis Backchannel, and you can interact via the comments section there, or you can use our web chat, which is at backchannel.tv. US virus cases are rising again as holiday nears on the front of the New York Times this morning. This story centers around Chicago. It says a month ago, new coronavirus cases in the United States were ticking steadily downward, and the worst of a miserable summer surge fueled by the Delta variant appeared to be over. But as Americans travel this week to meet far-flung relatives for Thanksgiving dinner, new virus cases are rising once more, especially in the upper Midwest and Northeast. And federal medical teams have been dispatched to Minnesota to help at overwhelmed hospitals. Michigan is enduring its worst case surge yet, with daily caseloads doubling since the start of November. Even New England, where vaccination rates are high, is struggling. Vermont, Maine, and New Hampshire have tried to contain major outbreaks. Nationally, though, case levels remain well below those seen in early September, when summer infections peaked and are below those seen last Thanksgiving. But conditions are worsening rapidly, and this will not be the post-pandemic Thanksgiving that Americans had hoped for. 90,000 cases each day. 90,000 cases a day. That's what America's seeing at the moment. You know, like 760,000 people dead now in America. It's like, it's just not going to end anytime soon. It really isn't. Also, how US lost a clean energy treasure to China on the front of the New York Times this morning. It says Tom Perriello, he saw it coming but could do nothing to stop it. Andre Kapanga, too, despite urgent emails, phone calls, and personal pleas, they watched helplessly as a company backed by the Chinese government took ownership from the Americans of one of the world's largest cobalt mines. It was 2016. A deal had been struck by the Arizona-based mining giant Freeport-McMoRan to sell the site located in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Hi, Valentino. Thank you for joining us on Backchannel. Nice to know that you're back with us here. Now figures prominently in China's grip on the global cobalt supply. The metal has been among several essential raw materials needed for the production of electric car batteries, and it's now critical to retiring the combustion engine and weaning the world off climate-changing fossil fuels. Mr. Perriello, a top US diplomat in Africa at the time, sounded alarms in the State Department. Mr. Kapanga, the mine's general manager, all but begged the American ambassador in Congo to intercede. Yeah, I dealt with this when you were away, Carla. You know? Funny. We've got like our whole thing going. You know? The show didn't stop when you stepped out for a minute. The show continued. So this is how the US lost a clean energy treasure to China. I mean, this all goes back to the deregulation that happened during the Trump presidency. You know, they wound back all of these EPA regulations. Conservatives obsessed with deregulation, not realizing that in order to live in a safe, humane, healthy world, we need regulations. You know, not all regulations are the same, you idiot. They're just not. You can't have a civil society without regulations. Why are the rules for law enforcement? Those are regulations. Don't drive drunk. You know, don't play with your phone while driving. You know, those are regulations. You're not going to roll those back. So if you roll back environmental protection regulations, and then before you know it, there's, you know, one of your cobalt mines is in the hands of the Chinese, do you still want to roll back all regulations? It's very interesting. I think about this stuff all the time, and so should you. President, starting with Dwight Eisenhower, had sent hundreds of millions of dollars in aid, including transport planes and other military equipment, to the mineral-rich country. Richard Nixon intervened, as did the State Department under Hillary Clinton, to sustain the relationship. And Freeport-McMoRan had invested billions of its own before it sold the mine to a Chinese company. Hi, Jessica. Thank you for joining us on Backchannel. It's 9:55 Pacific. I'm Anthony Davis. It's the Anthony Davis Show. Says so right there. We're just looking at how the US lost a clean energy treasure to China this morning. GOP donors flocked to back two Democrats, it says here, over the summer as he was working to scale back President Joe Biden's domestic agenda. Senator Joe Manchin III of West Virginia. Who calls themselves the third these days and thinks people are going to take it seriously? You know, it's like, really? Anyway, I actually have a friend called Henry, and he uses the third in his name. He's from Washington, D.C. Maybe it's a Washington thing. I mean, in England, you know, we have like Richard III, Henry III. But we're currently on Elizabeth II. Let's not tempt fate. Senator Joe Manchin traveled to an $18 million mansion in Dallas for a fundraiser that attracted Republican and corporate donors who have cheered on his efforts. In September, Senator Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, who along with Mr. Manchin has been a major impediment to the White House's efforts to pass its package of social and climate policy, stopped by the same home to raise money from a similar cast of donors for her campaign coffers. Even as Ms. Sinema and Mr. Manchin, both Democrats, they're not Democrats. They're not. They're not even moderate. They're conservatives. They just hold Democratic seats so they can screw up Democratic policy. That's who they are. They're moles. They're working for the other side. I know it's true because they're not trying to hide it. That's called a stage whisper. That's called a stage whisper. They've drawn fire from the left for their efforts to shrink and reshape Mr. Biden's proposals. They've won growing financial support from conservative-leaning donors. I mean, it's just a bit of a tragedy, isn't it, that these two people, it's mainly Manchin, isn't it, but Sinema as well, have completely derailed an entire movement of not just lawmakers, but 80 million people that voted Democrat. 80 million people voted for the infrastructure bill, for the Build Back Better thing, for this climate and social care bill. All of it voted because these were all election pledges by Joe Biden. So 80 million people voted for this, and yet two Democrats in name only are derailing an entire movement for a generation. Because, of course, the Build Back Better bill is $1 trillion over 10 years. The social and climate bill is $1.85 trillion over 10 years. It's a drop in the ocean. They spend like $6.5 trillion on the military every year. It's like, and that's why it annoys me when the Democrats kind of hail it as a victory that they've managed to, you know, get a $1.85 trillion bill passed in Congress, not yet passed in the Senate. Because that bill started out as a $6 trillion bill that got whittled down. It was going to be like $3 trillion, then $2 trillion. And then Joe Manchin is asked by the idiot TV commentators, well, what figure is going to be the right figure? And he's like, I reckon around 1.5. Anyway, they've finally agreed 1.85. But what's the obsession with the figure? What about the policy? Did anybody say to him, well, what is it about the bill that you don't like? They're just obsessed with this figure. And he doesn't know because he doesn't read. He's like best friends with Mitch McConnell. There's photographs of them like hanging out, laughing and joking, having a good time together. Joe Manchin, the faux Democrat. It's jokes. So there we go. It's a huge story. And the fact that it turns out that Sinema and Manchin have been, at the same fundraisers that Of course Conservatives are funding them. They're getting so rich. Joe Manchin, get this, right? He's from West Virginia, second poorest state in America, right? They'd be desperate for this social bill. They'd be desperate for the infrastructure bill, right? Second poorest in America. It's the third worst state for coronavirus, right? They just do nothing for their constituents. I'm slagging off Democrats here, you understand. They do nothing for their constituents. This is like the least represented country, unless you're lucky enough to live somewhere where you really have a representative that is just integral in the community. And there are a few. I'm not one of these people that rubbishes all politicians. Because, it's hard being a politician. It's no fun. It's hard work for the ones that work. Kyrsten Sinema never goes to the Capitol Hill. She's never there. She's on skiing trips. She's on vacation. She's off doing this and that. She's never there. She's famously one of the least attentive lawmakers. And yet she's derailing an entire program of spending for a generation. And there doesn't seem to be any guilt or remorse. It's fascinating to me. It's fascinating. Good morning. This is Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. It's just after 10 a.m. here on the West Coast. Thanks to Valentino, seems to have joined the chat 476 times. Logan, Treasure, Stacy, Darling, Chris, Kobe, Frosty, Ronald, Bob, Jessica, Dylan, thank you. Kieran, James, loving your work. Thank you for being with us. Nice to know that we are inundated with chat this morning. Inundated. Exonerations lift one burden for an assassin of Malcolm X, also on the front of the New York Times this morning. It says, waiting in the holding area of the Manhattan courthouse in 1966, Talmadge Hayer turned to the two men who were standing trial with him. He told them that he intended to confess to his role in the assassination of Malcolm X and make it clear that they were innocent. I just want to tell the truth, that's all, he said when he took the stand. But the jury was not convinced. Mr. Hayer had told a different story earlier in the trial, and he still refused to name his co-conspirators or to say who they were working for. 11 days later, the jury convicted all three men of first-degree murder. The other two men, known as Thomas 3 times Butler and Thomas 15 times Johnson, went down in history with Mr. Hayes as the assassins of an icon of the civil rights movement. So, yes. Exonerations lift one burden for an assassin of Malcolm X is the headline on the front of the New York Times this morning. So that's how the New York Times looks. Let's where are we? Let's get onto the Oregonian next. We're gonna whiz to Oregon. Oh, have we got one more in the meantime? Okay, let's take a look at this. Is that the one about juries or the parks? Let's have a look here. Or is it the climate pledge? It says state parks to spend $50 million on new campsites and upgrades. Look for improvements over the next 2 years, says the front page of the Oregonian. Oregon lawmakers are to take up bill on split jury verdicts. It says the landmark U.S. Supreme Court, the court case that struck down non-unanimous jury convictions in Oregon eventually could apply to more than 1,000 past cases. with many convictions likely overturned or expunged. Isn't that a wonderful word? Should we make that the word of the show? Expunged. The High Court's ruling last year in Ramos versus Louisiana ended Oregon's decades-long practice, allowing split verdicts to most felony defendants. The state has never allowed split verdicts in murder cases. Well, a second U.S. Supreme Court ruling this year said the state could decide to apply the Ramos ruling to defendants going through a form of legal review known as post-conviction relief. Petitions for reconsideration after all appeals are exhausted. And that's what the Oregon legislature is poised to consider next year. It's very interesting, isn't it? I don't know much about split juries. I've never served on a jury. And I don't think I'm allowed to serve on a jury here. I think you have to be a U.S. citizen to serve on a U.S. jury. But I would be very interested to kind of see the workings of the jury. And I think I would also be a bit of a troublemaker in the jury room, you know? I think I'd be the kind of person that would, like, holler. I'd be like, what is wrong with you people? I mean, like, seriously. I would be way too much trouble in the jury's deliberations room. I mean, they would definitely designate me like the leader of the pack. I'd be the one having to, like, communicate with the court. There's no way I'm sitting this one out. Like, bring it on. I'm a firm believer in justice, and I'm a firm believer in innocent until proven guilty. But saying that, you know, that could also have some issues. If you look at the Carl Rittenhouse case, for example, you know, the biggest issue with that case was that the judge gave the jury their instructions verbally, very slowly, very pointedly, in the direction that he wanted it to go, which was that if you could not prove that he didn't do this in self-defense, then he's not guilty. It's basically what the judge said. He pointedly gave the jury instructions, and that, for me, was the bias. So that's the Oregonian this morning. Where are we heading next? Oh yeah, we're going to look at this Michael Flynn story. This is a very, very interesting story. Michael Flynn, of course, is the former... What was his job in the Trump administration? Wasn't he the... he was the defense... He was the defense... Yeah, him. So, he's a bit nuts, right? Let's be very clear about this. Michael Flynn, you know, just because somebody is a former general, you know, wears stripes and has badges, it doesn't mean that they're just, you know, completely trustworthy. This is what we do. We put people on a pedestal, don't we? Anyway, the past weekend, he's, you know, he lied to the FBI. He admitted lying to the FBI, as you know. He stood on a stage at Cornerstone Church in San Antonio and he spoke his truth. He said, if we are going to have one nation under God, which we must have to have one religion. I quote, one nation under God and one religion under God. Christian nationalist. Mic drop. He finally said the quiet part out loud. This was part of this Reawaken America tour. Oh my goodness. I mean, you know, in 2021, if you're advocating for one religion, which is, you know, it's not even in the Constitution. I mean, the Constitution says that in America, all religions can practice and should be allowed to practice freely without prejudice. And yet, here is this former... What was he? He was an advisor on the... He was a military advisor. I need to find out what Michael Flynn's role was. He didn't hold it for very long under the Trump administration. He had it for a few months. But Apparently this wasn't the craziest thing to happen at the Cornerstone event last weekend. That's right, yes, Obama nominated him, but he didn't hold the position under Obama, I don't think. I think Michael Flynn was only brought into the kind of central White House under Trump. Anyway, let's just go back to this event at Cornerstone last weekend. It's hosted by the podcast host Kay Clark's Reawaken America tour. It's a disaster so very spectacular, they say, that Cornerstone, the church of famed end-times Christian Zionist John Hagee, had to release a face-saving statement saying that maybe, just maybe, things have gone a little bit too far, even for them. This is terrifying. There are a growing number of white nationalists who are pretending to be patriots, who have hijacked Christianity, hijacked abortion rights, hijacked all of these movements, taken them for their own. And a lot of Christians have walked away from the church because of this like evangelical movement. A lot of patriots have had to step away because these people have taken patriotism and turned it into nationalism. And the two are not the same. Donald Trump announced on stage that he was a nationalist because he wanted to appease the nationalist voters. You know, it's not unpatriotic to want to make your country better, to criticize your country because you want to make it better, to be critical and therefore to offer solutions. That's not unpatriotic. Oh, that's right. He was National Security Advisor under Donald Trump. But not for long. I think he lied to the FBI, and then he decided he wanted to change his plea, didn't he? And then didn't he get pardoned by Trump? Oh man, I mean, the moment you do one thing that's a bit weird, just give it a rest. Anyway, Michael Flynn has now gone off on one. The lunacy has really started to take over with him. So I don't really want to promote, him too much, but it says his statements were notable not just because the quiet part was said out loud, but because the quiet part has been getting louder and louder, with political and religious leaders calling explicitly for what amounts to a theocracy. Just last month, Ohio GOP Senate candidate Josh Mandel used the debate stage to opine that we should be instilling faith in the classroom, in the workplace, and everywhere in society, because, as far as he's concerned, there's no such thing as a separation of church and state. He tweeted on Saturday, "We stand with General Flynn." It's amazing to me. Okay, let's... Oh, hang on. That came out a bit loud. I'll call you back on this device here. I've got so many devices. Here we go. There we go. Let's get that one going. All my devices are going off at once. It's amazing. There we go. There we go. That's better. We're back. We're back in business. There's so much equipment here. It's so exciting to me. Last year, Bill Barr informed the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast that to the extent such a separation does exist, it's thanks to militant secularists who don't understand that America would be better off if we just let Christians run the show. He said it's been a while since people were willing to say so loudly and so publicly that America is a Christian nation, said Philip Gorski, a sociologist of religion at Yale. He said, "You didn't hear George Bush, Sr. or Jr. saying anything like that. Certainly they had a way of alluding to Christian elements of the American experiment, and they could speak to Christians in a language that was a little bit veiled. But they never would have said anything like what Michael Flynn said the other day, surely not in public, and probably not even in private." Naturally, this kind of Christian nationalist talk ruffles major feathers, and with good reason. It sounds crazy because it is crazy. What would a formerly Christian America actually look like? How would it be achieved? How would it get around the Constitution? Which versions of Christianity would we use? And what would we do with the millions of citizens who happen to disbelieve in that one religion under God? So, the fact that Michael Flynn said the quiet bit out loud suggests that this movement, and I've been saying this a bit recently, that these nationalists are not shy anymore. In the same way that the racists are not shy anymore. In the same way that the extremists on the far right are not shy anymore. They used to be hidden and operate at night. Now they're just out. They don't care anymore. Because we've had a president in the previous administration that advocated for all of these things, and if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for them. Hi, George. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Michaela. Hi, Valentino. Hello, everybody who's joined us on Backchannel this morning. I'm Anthony Davis. It's The Anthony Davis Show. I'm here till 11 Pacific. That's 2 o'clock Eastern, and then your pal Hal is here. Okay, let's go back to our little running order and just talk a little bit about this, because I feel like, maybe we could reflect on why this is so dangerous. We don't have to go too far back in history to understand the devastating implications of rhetoric like this on the very fabric of human society, and how it can endanger lives when you've got people in authority, people wearing stars and stripes, people with medals for their bravery, saying that we should be a nation of one religion. That's what happened in Nazi Germany. That is fascism. And these people are making the headlines. The fact that we're talking about it. This plan to turn America into a theocracy. You can join in by sending your message via your Echo Show device. Just say the word, whatever your wake-up word is, your Echo or the female name that I'm not going to say. I was at a party the other day with my daughter, and the kid whose birthday it was, her name was Alex. And I was like, who in this day and age names their daughter Alex without setting off all the devices in the house? Which parent thinks that's a good idea? Call her Alicia or Alicia or Alessandro. But you don't call her the name of your wake-up word for your speaker. Are you crazy? If you've got a friend or family who would enjoy Backchannel, then you could tell them, if they haven't got an Echo Show, that they can go and look at it on YouTube. Just search Anthony Davis Backchannel on YouTube. You get the live stream and catch-up facilities on previous shows if you've missed them. You can also chat via YouTube as well, and you can go to our web chat at backchannel.tv. It's 18 after 10. I'm Anthony Davis. Let's continue with this conversation. I also want to bring another story into the mix about the exodus of people from California and people moving to somewhere more affordable. And if you lived in California, if you haven't moved yourself, you'll probably know somebody that has. So I'm interested to know what's fueling this exodus here, because there's now Facebook groups that are like Life After California, full of stories about $4,000 U-Haul bills and home bidding wars in Texas. They reckon that up to 40% of Bay Area tech workers will consider leaving if remote work continues. Very interesting to me, because California is very expensive to live in, but wages are quite high and quality of life is quite good, and so people stay. But if everyone's working remotely, then why bother? For what reason do we need to stay? Millions of Americans moved in the last year, including here in California. Data from the 2020 census showed population changes across the country. Texas tallied 4 million new residents. Florida saw another 2.7 million. Both will have more representatives in Congress and electoral college votes. In contrast, California lost a congressional seat for the first time in history. March 2020 was a scary time, according to the Director of Communications for Meathead Movers. She said, her name's Dawn, she said, much to our surprise in April, things started going on the up and up and people started rescheduling. We lost 30% of our business. I'm going into my recline position. I do this normally at around 20 past 10 in the morning. It's like, I'm in the recline now. Because I want to think about this, and I feel like the recline really helps my thinking. Is there any reason to stay living somewhere where the cost of living is so high that you are almost priced out of your own job? And if you're working remotely, if there's no reason to go into the office, then do you think that your employer would keep you in that job? They would allow you to stay in that job if you had moved 200 miles away? I mean, is land border and territory and state even necessary? Alan, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Well, where is the best place to live in America? I mean, which city? I mean, there is one city that's been consistently voted the best place to live, but I'm trying to remember where it is. Maybe you know, and you can message me. Where in the US? Where in the US is the best place to live? I mean, right now, I feel like this little orange box is like the safest place. There could be a nuclear holocaust, and I would be completely safe in here. And whilst people up and down the land would be running for cover, I would just continue the Backchannel conversation, and you would continue to message me with your Echo Show device. Because this is like a panic room. Trust me, I'm always panicking when I'm in here. It's 10:22. This is Backchannel. It's actually 10:22 on the 22nd of November. So the date looks like this: 10/22, 11/22/21. There's a lot of twos and there's a lot of ones in there. In fact, if it wasn't for the fact that it was 10:22, when it's 11:22, all of the numbers for the date and the time today are going to be twos and ones. It'll be 11:22 on the 22nd of the 11th, 2021. In 1 hour. Just twos and ones. I don't even know if that's even a thing. Does that even, do people even care? Is that even a thing? Laura Passmore is the president of the Santa Maria Association of Realtors. She said the influx of new residents coming from bigger cities has created a fierce competition for would-be home buyers. The Bay Area, lots of folk not just visiting, but purchasing. People are offering $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 over the asking price or paying in cash. Mortgage rates are at their lowest levels in years, and that's also fueling the red-hot housing market. In March of 2020, there was an average of 28 listings within a certain time frame. This year, we only have 11. It's interesting. I do feel that people, off the back of this pandemic, have decided to reposition themselves. Alan, thank you for joining us. Has anybody got an idea of where the best place to live is in the US? For the quality of life, cost of living, all of these things, they call it the happiness factor, don't they? When they add together all of these things, they call it the happiness factor. They want to know that, where is the happiest place to live in America? And I'm telling you, there is somewhere. Consistently voted. Shall I tell you? It's been a while now. I feel like the jeopardy has risen significantly. Boulder, Colorado. Best place in the US, apparently. I've never been there. Boulder, Colorado. Some nice beats here at the moment. You hearing this? some chilled beats. Can we turn it up a bit, Carla? I'm just feeling like we should have like a smooth beats interlude whilst I, do the news. Here it is. Listen to this. It sounds like the track might be ending, just as I introduce it. That's the story of my life, that is. Just as I jump on the bandwagon, it's over. Oh, it's back. Even before COVID-19, California's population growth had slowed considerably. Since 2015, the state has lost at least 100,000 more people than it gained each year from other U.S. states, including growing numbers of working-class and black residents. But California is still a top U.S. destination for people moving from other countries, plus affluent transplants from other states. Do you know, I also think there's a lot of Republicans that want to leave California and they're moving to Florida. I've heard about this. They don't want to live in a progressive state where, it's a sanctuary state, a safe place for migrants, and, where they support the homeless and give a more of a generous attitude to humanity. They don't want to live here. I've spoken to people that do this, and they're like, we're off, Florida. Because Florida's like an equivalent place, isn't it? It has a similar amount of sunshine. Not as much, but a similar amount of sunshine. It's like on a similar trajectory, like hemisphere-wise. East-west. But it's a very, very red state now, increasingly so. Governor Ron DeSantis is basically turning it into this, coronavirus protection-free zone. Hi, Jessica. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. I'm reclining now. I'm in the kind of the deeper space now, where I can take my thoughts a little deeper because of the recline. Whereas when I'm sitting like up here, I'm on the edge of my seat. I feel like I'm reading the news. Whereas the recline gives me the opportunity just to kind of disappear into my own mind a little. Trust me, if you had to talk for 2 solid hours, you would also need to disappear into the depths of your mind. Try it sometime. Try sitting in a padded cell and just talk incessantly and see like how comfortable you need to be in order for the thoughts to come out in some coherent order. Because in my mind there's a lot of words, but putting them in the right order, well, that's a completely different skill. It says the pandemic has stripped away amenities used to justify California's high costs. It's created a backlog of 1.6 million unemployment claims in the state, with the nation's highest functional poverty rate. Gavin Newsom, the governor, styles California as a semi-autonomous progressive enclave. Economic stimulus measures that promised near-term relief withered in Sacramento this summer. In November's election, the biggest state battles revolve around commercial taxes and gig work, and in the meantime, the state's national profiles promise to keep rising as a political piñata in the culture wars that surround former President Donald Trump. There it is. It's a perfect explanation of what I've been talking about. I'd like to welcome Liv Harrison to the show. She's watching on her Echo Show device. Liv, of course, is a presenter and a host here on Backchannel. And she is in herself full of skills. So if you ever get the chance to kind of tune around, she finds the secret behind people's successes. So you can watch Liv Harrison here on Backchannel. You can also watch Haley and Allison. They wake you up in the morning with lots of laughs and their 1-star cinema review. And then don't forget your pal Hal is here in half an hour, right after this show. That's Hal Rudnick. And it says here he's charming and funny, but I'll allow you to be the judge of that. I don't think it's fair that we should put words into your mouth. Because it doesn't say that I'm charming and funny, because I am neither. Funny looking, maybe, and charmed for all the wrong reasons. 10:29. This is Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. Shall we have a look at that Where is that lovely story? Oh, yes, we want to talk about the Buy Nothing project. I'm really keen to do this now. We're bang on time for this. I'm interested in... We've been talking about supply chain for the last couple of weeks, the supply chain issues for Christmas and everything else. But I'm very interested to talk about, if you have changed your shopping habits to kind of buy stuff that people have already owned. So a Buy Nothing group started out as a project of two women who lived in Bainbridge Island, Washington. Liesl Clark and Rebecca Rockefeller's original idea was to create a hyper-local gift economy in their community. Their simple idea to create a platform where people could give things away, lend, and share among neighbors has grown into what could arguably be called a movement, and they've even written a book about it as well. Finding your local Buy Nothing group is as simple as choosing your country and state in the group finder on buynothing.org. You'll be directed to your nearest group's Facebook group, and for now, the groups are almost all hosted on Facebook, so you'll need an account to join, but Buy Nothing is at work on their own app. That's good, because I'm not joining Facebook for love nor money. I'm still convinced it'll never catch on. So, what do you get on a Buy Nothing group? Maybe you've already joined one. Maybe you're on this Buy Nothing group. Is it better than Craigslist or like a charity shop? And I do think, let me tell you my Free Cycle story now, because we have one in England called Free Cycle, which I used to use. And I had an old washer dryer that I was going to be selling, and I was looking at it and I was like, that's really not worth anything. I would be foolish to ask anybody to pay for this. It works, but it's not an attractive piece of equipment. It's it's nearly 15 years old. I'm giving this away. So I put the washer dryer, advertised it on the Free Cycle website. And a very nice couple came to collect it. They were kind of hippies and they had an estate vehicle, like a station wagon. And they came and they hauled it up the stairs, because I lived in the basement. They hauled it up the stairs and they stuck it in the back of their trunk, and off they went. And they were very happy, and I was happy that they were happy. They were happy that I was happy. And I was like, this whole Free Cycle business is brilliant. This is like a community living as they should. Anyway, cut a long story short, not 2 weeks, maybe 10 days later, I hear this rustling at the front door, and I'm like, what is that? And it was the sound of a brown, envelope, a padded envelope being shoved through the mailbox. I was like, what? Anyway, so I went and picked it up off the floor. It was a pair of my underpants. It was a pair of my underpants that this lovely couple had kindly returned that was clearly stuck in the drum. Was stuck in the drum of this washer dryer that I had given them. I had gifted them. They'd driven all the way back from wherever they lived to return a pair. Thank goodness that the panties were clean. Thank goodness the machine had already done the spin and the dry, and they were just stuck in the dryer. But they very kindly returned my undercrackers through the letterbox. And I was a little embarrassed, I'll be honest, because they weren't my best pantaloonies. You have for best, for going out or for dating or for, you have your best ones. And then you have your other ones, which you will only really wear when you're on your own. They don't quite fit, they've been stretched a few too many times, or they've got a massive split in the crotch. Those are the ones you wear. Unfortunately, the pair that they returned were not my besties. So sometimes, this community sharing thing can bite you in the backside. Literally. So let's take a little bit of a closer look at this, because I do think it's very interesting, this Buy Nothing project. There's others, Freegal, Free Cycle. Have you got an item from a giveaway site? What was it? Have you given something away via one of these sites? And how did it make you feel to share your stuff? It is astonishing what people throw out, isn't it? Everything from pianos to surfboards to boats, It's been. I did it once. I had a sequin waistcoat. Yes, Jessica. I had a sequin waistcoat. It was gold, and I wore it for a job one time, and I took it to the local charity shop to, give it away. And no word of a lie, 2 days later, I was in line at the post office, and the guy who worked in the post office was wearing, he was one of these guys that always likes to wear a bow tie and a comedy tie or something to make his personality a little bit more, because he was the fun one in the post office. The post office was 2 doors down from the charity shop. I swear he was wearing my gold lame sequined waistcoat that I wore for one job. He was wearing it proudly. He probably bought it for £1 or something. And I was like, wow. I almost wanted to ask for it back, but it actually looked much better on him than it did on me. I wish I could remember his name. He was very charismatic. The old ladies used to love going and collecting their pension checks from him because he was always so communicative and kind. But now he sports a sequin waistcoat in gold. I wonder if he's still wearing it. I mean, this was 20 years ago. I wonder if he's still wearing it. I really hope so. So have you ever thrown anything out that you've discovered somewhere else? You've found it again? Have you ever given something away only to really regret it and want to buy it back? I've done that. I've gone into a charity shop and bought my own stuff because after a few weeks I was I really didn't want to get rid of that. Ended up paying a few dollars for it. So let's talk about these things because there's a lot to talk about this morning. And I also, in a few minutes, maybe in 4 minutes, I want to get onto this story about Nathaniel Hawthorne, the rather brilliant author. We'll look at his life in just in a few minutes' time. In the meantime, hi to Jessica, Alan, to George, to Valentino, also to Liv, who's joined us as well. Thank you very much for being part of the Backchannel this morning. It's 10:37 as we discuss free cycle and recycle and giving stuff away. And if you want to be in touch, then you just say your wake-up word to your device, followed by say, and then your message. You can also use the chat facility at backchannel.tv, and you're very welcome to just chat with us on YouTube as well. There's a comment section there, and that appears here on my screen. So that's how you interact with us at Backchannel. Super easy to do. Should we try the news update again, Carla, and see if we can play that, seeing as we've got a couple of minutes before we change direction with this story. This is a podcast that I host every day, just a 2-minute news update, and we'll play it here on Backchannel, and you can decide if you'd like to subscribe to it. It's called US News Update. Here it is. It's Monday, November 22. From the Volley Network, this is your daily US News Update. I'm Anthony Dennis. A difficult political atmosphere for President Joe Biden may have become even more treacherous with the acquittal of Kyle Rittenhouse. Biden was already facing sliding poll numbers with an electorate worn down by the coronavirus pandemic and increasing inflation. Now the president finds himself caught between outraged Democrats, some of whom were already stewing over Biden's inability to land police reform and voting rights legislation, and Republicans looking to use the Rittenhouse case to exploit the national divide over matters of grievance and race. Rittenhouse would end up fatally shooting 2 men and maiming a third. Rittenhouse and his lawyers successfully argued that he acted in self-defense during a confrontation in which he feared for his life. The verdict in the case comes at a moment when Biden is trying to keep fellow Democrats focused on passing his massive social services and climate bill. Meanwhile, an SUV plowed into a Christmas parade in the Milwaukee suburb of Waukesha on Sunday, injuring more than
20 people. Those injured appeared to include children, members of a marching band and a dance troupe, according to witnesses and videos of the incident posted online. Police Chief Dan Thompson said, "We have a person of interest that we are looking into at this time." Finally, the US government's chief medical advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, warned on Sunday that time was running short to prevent a dangerous new surge of COVID-19 infections from overwhelming the upcoming holiday season. Your daily US news update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo Show to open Backchannel.
There it is. That's a US News Update. And if you'd like to subscribe, you can do that wherever you get your podcasts. It's 20 to 11. This is Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. Nathaniel Hawthorne, fatherless since the age of 4, achingly introverted, a man of great, genial, comprehending silences. Considered handsomer than Lord Byron, known to duck behind trees and rocks to avoid speaking with townspeople, he was born in 1804 in Salem, Massachusetts. He was an old bachelor of 38 when he married Sophia Peabody. When their first child, a daughter called Una, was born in 1844, Hawthorne was a struggling writer about to turn 40. Una would later become the model for The Heroine's Daughter in the Scarlet Letter, an 1850 novel that lifted Hawthorne out of poverty, abruptly ending his many good years as the obscurest man of letters in America. Yes, we're talking about Nathaniel Hawthorne this morning. And we always like to end this show with, delving into the arts and looking at some of the most talented writers, authors, poets, and artists that have really made America great. Not again. It's always been great. In the bleak midwinter of 1849, 5 weeks before Una's 5th birthday, Hawthorne writes in the notebook, "Her beauty is the most flitting, transitory, most uncertain and unaccountable affair that ever had a real existence. It beams out when nobody expects it. It has mysteriously passed away when you think yourself sure of it. If you glance sideways at her, you perhaps think it is illuminating her face. But turning full round to enjoy it, it is gone again. When really visible, it is rare and precious as the vision of an angel. It is a transfiguration, a grace, delicacy, or ethereal fineness, which at once in my secret soul makes me give up all severe opinions that I may have. It is but fair to conclude that on these occasions we see her real soul. When she seems less lovely, we merely see something external. But in truth, one manifestation belongs to her as much as another. For, before the embellishment of principles, what is character but the series and succession of moods?" You see, this is the kind of prose we need more of. Don't you agree? This latter insight, far predating the dawn of psychology as we know it, touches the eternal depths of human nature. As adults, we are always at our most childish when we allow the ceaselessly shifting weather systems of our mood to override our moral precepts, thrusting us back in time to those primal impulses of reflective reaction, cutting us off from the capacity for reflective response that is the mark of maturity. Just a few words about Nathaniel Hawthorne, the author. Just talking a little bit and hearing some of his writings. And it occurs to me, when I read this stuff, especially read it aloud, because I do think reading aloud is very different to, reading something to yourself. But it's very interesting to me that we ignore the value of the English language so much, don't we? We use so few words in conversation. We really have lost the ability to communicate on any level of depth. I mean, some people obviously are quite good at it, but they get criticized for being flowery. And I'm not really a fan of Shakespeare, which to you as an American might sound sacrilegious. Me being an Englishman and Shakespeare being an Englishman, you might think that that is me taking my cultural heritage for granted, and you're probably right. But I just don't really like Shakespeare. I didn't find the comedies funny. I didn't find the tragedies sad. I just thought that it was of its time, and I don't really enjoy how Shakespeare has traveled. And I've sat through an awful lot of it, and I've read an awful lot of it, and I can recite an awful lot of it, and I still don't like Shakespeare. I mean, I can quote Romeo and Juliet, rebellious subjects, enemies to peace, profaners of this neighbour-stained still. Will they not hear? What ho, you men, you beasts, that quench the fountain of our pernicious rage? I mean, this language, it's practically Shakespearean. It's called iambic pentameter when you speak in this way. Rebellious subjects, enemies to peace. It's an iambic pentameter. And some people, probably less so in the Americas, but certainly there are some lunatics in England that still talk like this. This is how they speak. Mainly for fun. But it's really interesting for me to kind of look in and look at the writings of some great American authors. In this case, Nathaniel Hawthorne. This introverted person. Pedro, hi, thank you for joining us. And yet this man of great, genial, comprehending silences, considered handsomer than Lord Byron, known to duck behind trees and rocks to avoid speaking with townspeople. And yet an old bachelor of 38 when he married his wife, Sophia Peabody. And him living in poverty until 1850, when finally he writes a novel that ends his life of poverty and puts him on the straight and narrow. It's kind of wonderful, isn't it, to know that words have the ability and the power to change your life. And I do think that we ignore these words at our peril. This is why we really should read old stuff, not necessarily Shakespeare, but, Shakespeare is older than this. This is just 1850. Shakespeare was years before that. Because the language hasn't really changed that much, but Shakespearean English is actually quite hard to recognize. He was known as the obscurest man of letters in America until he wrote that book. And then he became, I wouldn't say mainstream, but maybe in 1850 that was mainstream. You write the Scarlet Letter using all this beautiful language and suddenly everything changes. Her beauty is the most flitting, transitory, most uncertain and unaccountable affair that ever had a real existence. It beams out when nobody expects it. It has mysteriously passed away when you think yourself sure of it. If you glance sideways at her, you perhaps think it is illuminating her face, but turning full round to enjoy it, it is gone again. And when it's really visible, it is rare and precious as the vision of an angel. He knew how to romance somebody, didn't he? I mean, he wasn't short of the words. There's a new movie version do you remember the Steve Martin film Roxanne? Which is based on Cyrano de Bergerac. The story of the ugly poet and the handsome idiot. And they're both keen to get Roxanne's affection. And so the handsome idiot becomes the face of the relationship, but the ugly Cyrano. In the case of the Steve Martin movie, Cyrano had a huge long nose. That's what made him ugly. And in the case of the new movie that has just came out, it's that little guy from Game of Thrones, I think, that's playing the lead. Isn't his character Jon Snow? Am I right? I've never seen Game of Thrones, so I don't know. Maybe it's not Jon Snow, but it's the little guy. He plays Serrano. What's his name? Yeah, Peter who? Dinklage. Peter Dinklage. There you go. Dinklage? I don't know who these are. I don't really know who anybody is, to be honest. But I know that he's very good. I've watched the trailer for the new movie Serrano. And it's a remake of Cyrano de Bergerac. I think Gérard Depardieu did a movie of that in the 90s. And I think, and I definitely know that in the 80s, late 80s, Steve Martin did a movie with Daryl Hannah called Roxanne. And so this whole concept of Serrano was a real person. He's not made up. He's a real linguist of history. He's one of the great, poets, a bit like the Marquis de Sade. I mean, these characters of history were just like very capable writers and poets. And they've now found themselves in drama and they've become part of our social history. But I do recommend the movie Serrano. It looks very cute. And how this little guy is trying to get the affections of a woman that he knows is completely out of his league. And so he joins forces with this young, handsome black man. This is in the new version, who becomes the face of the relationship, but he has no words. So Serrano writes these love letters that Roxanne reads and thinks that are coming from the handsome guy. Hi James, hi Marty, hi Nathan, Pedro. Thank you for joining us here on Backchannel, and I'm Anthony Davis. I'm only here for another 4 minutes though, and then your pal Hal will be here on Backchannel. We're talking about Nathaniel Hawthorne. He's one of the great American authors. And he wrote a book in 1850, a novel that lifted him out of poverty. It was called The Scarlet Letter. And so we are discussing his writing, and I've been quoting some of his words. And we're also talking about, other great wordsmiths of literature and also of cinema. There's a new movie called Cyrano. There's the original movie, Cyrano de Bergerac, with Gérard Depardieu. And then there's that original 80s movie with Steve Martin called Roxanne, all based on the same story. Wonderful, really. So, do you ever make the effort to really kind of use the language that you've learned? Because English is so capable. It's got more. There are more words in English than in any other language on the planet. Did you know that? We have more words in English than any other language. So we have the ability to be even more descriptive and even more creative and even more flowery, dare I say. But I do recognize that in this world of shorthand, where we're texting and using emojis and abbreviations and LOL, that we are in some way devaluing the language that was so cleverly created. And even American English has like half the words of British English. So they're not the same language. They're two different languages. So maybe we'll talk about this more another day, because it's nearly time for me to go. But I do recognize that there is such a joy of communication, and Backchannel is a perfect example of that. How I can use words to talk with you, and you can use words to talk to your Amazon device. You just say the word, whatever your wake-up word is, echo, or the lady's name, and then the word say, and then your message. And that's how your messages come through the internet and land with me here. And maybe, for the next show, for your Pal Hal show, you should try the kind of language and words that maybe you wouldn't typically use. Maybe you can, ratchet it up a gear. I taught my daughter the word argumentative the other day. and she's using it all the time now. In fact, she likes to say the word argumentative so many times, it's practically an argument. I'm like, it's enough already with that word. I'm back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, that's 12 Eastern. Do stay with Backchannel because your pal Hal with Hal Rudnick is on the way. He'll be with you for a couple of hours as well. And if you've missed any of the show and you want to catch up, you can go to our YouTube channel. Just search Backchannel Anthony Davis and you'll see all of the previous episodes there that you can catch up with if you're interested. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 9. Have a great Monday.